start this. That's recording. And we'll start recording there. All right, Don, I just want to say thank you today for sitting down with me and doing this oral history and talking about your service and that. It's always great to listen to you veterans and what exactly it is that you guys saw and what you guys experienced over there. We're just going to start out with some real simple questions, just basic biographical information here. If you could tell us all where you were born and a little bit about your parents, who they were, and what they were doing for their livings.
I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1947. My dad was a carpenter, and my mom was what was considered a housewife back then.
Now, did they serve?
My father was in the Marine Corps at Guadalcanal.
Okay. Did you have any aunts, uncles that served at all, or?
Yeah, my one uncle was in the Navy. The other uncle was in the Army. He was a state commander for the VFW. A lot of cousins in the Air Force.
Awesome.
And the Army. Forgot about them, yep.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about them. How was it like having a dad that went to some place like Guadalcanal?
You know, back then I gotta say, he and my uncles didn't talk about it much for whatever reason. My one uncle on the aircraft carrier saw a lot of action. My dad saw a lot of action, but him and his friends didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. So, as you grow up, what's it like growing up in the Cold War? I mean, you were at the heart of it there in the 50s. What kind of things went on at like schools, training? Did you ever feel like Russia was actually going to attack?
No, and I never did the under the desk thing or anything that I saw in the news and whatnot. But no, I never even thought about it. You know, to me, we had a good life. You know, we played baseball. We came home at night when the street lights came on. You know, we got up in the morning, went out and played with our friends. It was a different time than today.
As we enter into the 1960s, there some crazy things happened both at home and also abroad. Do you remember the Berlin Wall going up? Was there, having veterans in your family, were they alarmed by that? Were you?
You know, going to family reunions, you know, and get-togethers, you know, Sunday dinners with the families, you know, relatives. The dads would talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
but the kids were in there. The kids were out playing. You know, we weren't involved back then. I mean, even as teenagers, you know, you finally got to meet your cousins and whatnot. You were talking kid stuff, and the adults were talking about it. I don't think anything really came up until Kennedy got assassinated.
Sure.
Then everybody got involved in politics, the Vietnam thing, the Cuba thing. You know, and then it started to surface from there.
Do you still remember JFK's assassination?
Yeah, I was sitting in a chemistry class in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And everything stopped. And the whole world cried, I thought, or the whole country.
Yeah. Was that maybe your time where you were like, okay, this is the shot fired across the bow, we're going to war now?
Well, it made me realize there's something else going on in the world besides fast cars, trying to sneak beer out at night and going to the drive-in movie with your girlfriend. There's something going on out there. And yeah, it did. It changed.
Awesome. Now, which branch of service do you enlist or do you get drafted?
I was away at college and the draft was on. I had a very high number. The odds of my getting drafted were slim, but I did not want to get drafted. So, and my dad was in the Marines and he talked about it and how it helped him grow up. And I decided I wanted to join the Marines.
Not just because of the dress blues.
Well, I did like the uniform. You got a point there.
Awesome. Now, when is it that you get into the Marine Corps?
As far as what?
When does
August,
you ship off to boot camp? Let's start.
August of '67. I was living in Chicago at the time. I went and visited a recruiter, and he told me all about it. Didn't sugarcoat it, and I says, okay, I signed. And got on a plane with him with a bunch of other Chicagoans, and we actually formed our own platoon. Usually when you go to boot camp, they bring guys from all over the country, you put them together, you get to meet new people. We were the Chicago mob.
The Chicago Mob.
Every time we screwed up on the drill field, he made us put our collars up and put our hands in our pockets and shuffle.
Oh. Well, did you have to stand on the yellow footprints?
Oh yeah. First experience, I went in, because I just got out of college, I ran out of money. That was another reason I joined, is I could set one foot in Vietnam, you get 4 years of college. Little did I know what happened when you set that foot in Vietnam. But I went to O'Hare Airport, got on an airplane with these other guys, and I had a pair of gray slacks on, cordovan wingtips, a double-breasted blazer, and hair down the middle of my back. And everybody warned me to get it cut before I went, but I wasn't going to do it. And they didn't mess with me after I got off the yellow footprints. They just shaved it off, and the rest is history.
Yeah. How was that experience? You know, they talk about boot camp being a wake-up call almost because of how different it is once you get there versus life as you were living.
We talked about this. Full Metal Jacket was a mild version of boot camp back in the 60s. I don't know how it is for Marines today, but they didn't take no shit.
Yeah.
I mean, they let you know who was boss and you better toe the line.
Yeah. You ever have a moment where you thought, is this worth it while you were at boot camp?
What the hell was I thinking?
Yes, one of those.
Every day.
Yeah.
Come on, anybody who's been in the Marine Corps, you know. And yet, come graduation day, you couldn't be prouder. And the fact that you made it through all that crap, excuse my expression.
Oh, no, you're fine. What about funny moments? Now, I know you probably couldn't laugh at the moment, but looking back at it, you go, man, those guys did that to us, and I can't believe they did it.
You had experiences like when you screwed up during the day or something happened, they got a bad report, and they tell you to get out on the tarmac, and you're in your underwear, you know, your t-shirt and baggy white underwear, and they tell you get back in there and bring us your pillow, and you come out and get your pillow and throw it on the ground, and they said, put it back, go back and make your bunk. Then they said, bring me a blanket, and everybody brings their blanket out. And then the last thing he does is bring out your mattress, and every time you're going back in there, you're remaking your bunk. And then he said, bring out your mattress, hold it over your head. You know, was it 2 inches thick? You're holding your mattress over your head. Now, we're going to do jumping jacks. I mean, it was the most ridiculous crap in the world. Or, let's see, what else happened that was funny? You had to warn your people when they sent you a letter, do not put, they used to sneak chewing gum in there, you know, with the foil wrapper. And if you got that, they made you eat the foil wrapper. And if you had fillings, it hurt. Or you had the guy that got a box of chocolates, and the drill instructor made him bury it in the gravel. And then he said, change my mind, you can have it, dig it up and eat it. I mean, it's just weird stuff like that.
That's awesome. I guess I should have asked this maybe a little bit earlier, but what exactly was your MOS going into the Marine Corps?
Actually, back then they didn't assign them until after you took all the tests.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we didn't get it. And we actually did not find out our MOS till graduation day.
Okay. What was your given MOS?
0311 rifleman.
Ah. Everybody's a rifleman in the Marine Corps, though. Aren't they?
Yeah. I got interviewed by the local paper one time, and I said my punishment came graduation day due to some circumstances that I was an 0311 rifleman, the lowest form of Marine there is, but the backbone of the Marine Corps. And he didn't put backbone of the Marine Corps in the article. I caught a lot of crap over that. So, yep, everyone is a rifleman, you're right.
Yeah. We always make that joke. They say that until you go to the rifle range.
Yep.
And then you see who's really the 11 and not, but...
Oh, man.
Yeah. Did you, so what happens after you're done with boot camp? You survived, 8 weeks, 13 weeks? How long was your boot camp? Do you remember?
12 weeks.
12 weeks. So you survived the 12 weeks of hell of the boot camp. You become a Marine. Which actually, I should maybe ask about that. How does that process go? Do you just, after 12 weeks, become a Marine? Or is there a ceremony? Do they...
Well, we had graduation day. I happened to be the platoon honorman, which was one of my goals when I went in, because my recruiter said the only way I'd get dressed blues is if I became the top man in my platoon. So I told him I would see him with the blues at graduation. Found out our MOS is now we went off to infantry training, and there's actually no ceremony. It was just I had to dress blues. I've got a picture here in my book of me marching in front of the platoon. Everybody's in greens with a rifle, and I got the flag. But circumstances made me an 0311 rifleman, and we can talk about that later.
What was infantry training like? Because I'm sure at this point you get the MOS 0311. It's, I think, 1967. You said you were in. I'm sure you connected the dots. You realized real quickly you're going to Vietnam. So did that training, do you feel like that training was helpful in preparing you?
You know, boot camp gave you the discipline, and then infantry training at Camp Pendleton, where you went on maneuvers, night maneuvers and whatnot. You were told to guard a hill and not let anybody up the hill. And we got in trouble for that one because we were guarding the hill, and another platoon was coming up the hill. How are you going to stop them? We started throwing rocks at them. A lot of people got hurt. We were told, our commander, he says, you did a good job, but. So, yeah, no, it was, night training, marching, carrying your buddy, up a hill, pretending he's wounded. It came in handy.
Yeah.
They did a good job training-wise.
Did you say it's definitely a physically demanding MOS or military job?
Well, you know why they want you to do pull-ups and push-ups and everything and be in shape. I mean, you went through it, so it paid off.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say the 11s got out a little light because you guys got to go on all the hikes with just an M4 at our time, while I'm over here as a machine gunner and we have 50s and marks and all this lovely heavy stuff we're carrying. So.
Well, that's like graduation or when we went to final drill competition. I've been carrying a flag for 10 weeks. Now you want me to play with a rifle? It was different. I mean, granted, I would do it, but they're doing it every day. Port arms, order arms, everything. I'm carrying a flag doing this.
Yeah.
So that was the toughest part for me.
It's always hard when you go with the rifle and you feel it start to slip as you're going from like left shoulder to right shoulder, and you're not supposed to move your head, but naturally you move your head, and every time you get caught. Everything.
And the fact that I was left-handed made it even tougher because I wanted to do everything different.
Oh, Don, you had to make it hard on yourself, huh?
Yep.
So where was ITB? Was that in the Area 52 that they have out there in Camp Pendleton?
Yep.
Out there. So did you ever go up on like the Alpha Shelf, that
Nope.
little ridge or anything like that? No. Okay.
No, it changed with the new Marines.
Yeah.
They had to get different training, I call it.
Yeah, there's a lot of hiking around that Alpha Shelf for us.
The other thing I noticed about training is, throughout the Camp Pendleton, when you went to Vietnam, different atmosphere, different terrain.
Yeah.
But it just got you in shape, is what I would say.
Sure. All right. So when you finish your ITB training and you get your MOS 0311, you completed all of that. Is that when you ship out to Vietnam? That's right then?
Well, actually, they gave us a break. It happened in the middle of training. They let us come home for Christmas.
Okay.
And then we went back to finish our training and then shipped out to Vietnam.
Okay. So where then and when, I should ask, do you get to Vietnam? Where's your first place in Vietnam that you arrived?
Da Nang.
Da Nang?
Yep.
And that would have been early of 68?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they decide which unit you're going to be attached to and plan on getting you out there.
Okay. Which unit were you attached to and where were you?
26 Marines at Quezon.
Okay. Quezon. That's, I've heard that come up in a couple different oral histories. That was a rough place, I hear.
Yeah, if you watch some of the videos, they say, 15,000 Marines surrounded by 120,000 Vietnamese. I wish I would have seen that video before I went there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I would say I changed my mind.
I'm sure, yeah. I think everybody would have at that point. So where exactly was Quezon? What was that? Was it way out there in the jungle?
No, we were at My first assignment was at the air base, which is directly south of the DMZ.
Okay.
And then I was there a couple of weeks at the airstrip, and then they put me on a hill, the most northernmost hill, 551, I believe it was, the most northern hill. We used to watch through telescopes, watching rocket rounds on elephants being escorted through the jungle. You know, it's kind of different.
Yeah.
But flew from Da Nang into the Khe Sanh airstrip, which is a funny story because they put us on a C-130 with an Air Force pilot, and he warned us that if we take sniper rounds, we're not going in. And all of a sudden you hear the pew, pew, pew as the rounds are going by us as he's coming into the airstrip, and straight up and out of there and back to Da Nang. Next day, the same thing. Took a couple sniper rounds straight up and back to Da Nang. Next day, we got a Marine pilot. He says, hang on. He says, when I hit the runway, he says, I'm going to open the door. He says, get the fuck off my airplane. Pew, pew, pew. Rounds are going off. He's going in hard. He hits that deck, gets to the end of it. The door is going down as he turns around. He goes off the runway. Now he's stuck. So he revs up the engine to get back on the metal plates. We're rushing out the back. I'm seeing sea bags and bodies flying by me because he's got those engines cranking. One of my best friends fell, broke his ankle, and he was on a plane the next day and out of there. One day he spent in Khe Sanh.
That's I think that's the new definition for coming in hot.
Well, and that's when I saw the C-130 that got hit and it's sitting off to the side. You know, the wreckage was there, but then you knew what you were getting into.
I'm sure that was a great, welcome to Vietnam experience.
Well, and smart pilots versus combat pilots. You know, the Air Force, hey, they're shooting at me, I'm out of here. The Marine says, hey, you guys got to get here.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you've seen the crash wreckage of a C-130 there. You're coming in under fire. You're probably at this point in your head, and rightfully so, it's going, where the hell did I just get sent to, right?
And no weapon.
You left that out.
Didn't get a weapon till I got there.
Yeah, there's nothing better than getting shot at and having no way of returning fire.
You got it.
Yeah, that's definitely okay. So we got definition of coming in hot and definition of being up Schitt's Creek without a paddle.
You got it.
Welcome to Don's first 24 hours in Vietnam. So after that, what just exactly? I'm guessing. Were you constantly under attack then? Out there?
No, not at that point. The first thing they do is they put you with an old timer, salty Marine, and they had me making sandbags and whatnot. And all of a sudden you hear the early warning device go up, rocket round or mortar round coming in. So you jump in a hole and hide. And the guy I was with, he was so seasoned it was ridiculous. Because every time you give him alarm, I jump in the hole, and he's like up there smoking a cigarette, filling a sandbag, whatever. Finally says, you ain't gonna hear the one that's gonna get you. So after a while, we're sitting on top of the sandbags, there's no alarms going off, all of a sudden the alarm goes off, he's smoking a cigarette, and we're sitting there watching him come in. So that was like my first, third or fourth day there. And I just sat next to him, I said, well, if it's gonna get him, it's gonna get me, but then you kind of blend in. It's just.
So did you get to do a lot of patrolling then as an 11?
Not the first couple of weeks. You're on line watch every night. The one thing I didn't like was you could have how do I say this nicely? You could have a magazine in your weapon, but you couldn't chamber a round. So you're on night watch. And if you heard a noise, you had to call up to the hill. They would say, lock and load. So one night I heard some noises coming in, and the officer today jumped in the hole. We're on the perimeter around the base. He jumped in the hole. I almost shot him. Scared the living shit out of me. And he said, you don't have a round chamber, do you? Yes, sir. That's when I found out you had to call to the top of the hill. They didn't tell me that ahead of time. But I almost shot him because he snuck up behind me. I was scared to death.
I mean, that doesn't sit well with even me, because it's almost like having your hands tied in a situation where the enemy could attack, and now I have this extra hurdle to go through in order to to engage. And like, I mean, it's not nighttime like it is here.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't see the
Whether or
band.
not it changed after that, because they were taking a lot of crap, but yeah. And maybe it's because I was a new guy.
Okay.
And what happened. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you ever watch The Pacific, that's a great show. I mean, you can see night combat going real south in your other case. You know, one of your buddies goes out for the bathroom or something like that, and you end up shooting them. I get what they're trying to prevent, but it's like, man, we're right here at the front lines in the DMZ. I mean, I think you can untie my hands a little bit and allow me to chamber around. So when is it that you get to change your MOS, so to speak, to a radio man?
When they assigned me to the hill, and we marched out there, now I have a weapon at least. We go up to the hill, and I met Corporal O'Connor, my squad leader, and he asked me if I knew how to work a radio. And like a dummy, I said yes, not knowing what he was planning because he didn't have a radio man. So I ended up being his radio man. And I knew how to turn it on, I knew how to change the frequencies and whatnot. So I ended up being the 226 radio, Fox 226 radio man.
How do you still remember your call sign? No.
No, all I remember is going on ambushes at night. And my first ambush, I'm scared to death. And we walk out from the hill and we go out on this trail and we position ourselves. And all I'm supposed to do is lay there with the radio, and the hill calls in and wants to know situation report. And I don't know how it is in the matter, what I do is hit the button 3 times. It means everything's okay. So I'm laying there and ask for a report. I hit the button. Hour later, he asked for a report. I hit the button. Next thing, all I hear is everybody's sound asleep except me. There was nobody on that side of our hill, so I guess it was calm and they knew it. But I'm scared to death and everybody's sleeping. And then one night we went out there, and I'm on the radio. And I hear this buzzing noise and couldn't figure out what the hell it was. It's like, well, one of our guys had the DTs, and he's shitting his, excuse my French, he's shitting his pants, and he was like solid brown. He just filled up his utilities, and he laid there and he's covered in flies. So that was the noise I heard. So, yeah.
Oh.
So they had a host him. And the third time I was out there, I got situation report. I hit the buttons. A couple hours later, hit the buttons. He says, "Give me Corporal O'Connor," and they never say names or talk. And I'm hitting the buttons, and he goes, "Listen, you dumb shit, give me Corporal O'Connor." So I got to tap O'Connor on the shoulder and hand him the radio. He jumps up. He says, "Everybody up! Get the fuck out of here!" Well, they were calling it a B-52 strike. Pretty far from us, but they were worried about one of these guys being off course possibly and whatnot. And so, pitch black, we're running back to the hill. And we get back to the hill, and next morning, well, that night, you hear the boom, 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 and the next day, you get the binoculars and you look out there and everything's gone. But pretty far from us.
Yeah.
Wasn't even close to us. But that was interesting.
I bet that was awesome to be around a B-52 strike.
Oh, that and Puff,
Yeah.
I call them the paratrooper planes, what is it, C-17s?
Something like that, yeah.
And they're flying along, and you got the lights on. What the hell? They're waiting for a sniper round. And as soon as that sniper round comes up, they turn that plane on its side, and all you hear is, and you see this red streak hit the ground. It just covers a football field. Beautiful.
Yeah. That's awesome. I had another gentleman talk about Puff, and he loved Puff too. There was nothing better than seeing Puff out there. It was interesting hearing about Puff. So, proceeding forward in your, as you spend more time in Vietnam, do you feel more and more confident with your skill set then? As you become more acquainted with the routine of Khe Sanh and the environment?
Every day it was something different, so you got to acclimate yourself to the environment. You knew what to do. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff you saw, some guys just didn't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But yeah, every day it was a learning experience.
Could you go into detail, or could you start possibly explaining a little bit of what happened the day that you were injured?
Yeah, we got the call the night before that they'd gone out. Another unit had gone out on a mission and got hit, and they left 3 bodies out there, and the Marines will not leave anybody behind. So we got told we were going to go out that next morning, early in the morning. So I was, O'Connor was the lead. He was the point squad leader, so I was his radio man. So we've got the point squad, the 2 flanking squads, tail squad, and an officer in the middle while we're moving out. And the officer's radio took a puke. Now everybody's loaded up with mortar rounds and machine gun rounds, and I got a radio, an M16 and a 45. And the officer comes up to O'Connor and says, "You guys are the point squad. We'll follow you. You don't need a radio. Give me your radio." So I didn't have a radio. And I also just had a 45 and an M16, so I was traveling light. So anyway, we got to the position where the Marines got hit the day before, found the 3 guys, they were all alive. So they were going to call in the medevac choppers, but before they did that, our officer, and I don't know his name, unfortunately, decided he wanted to see what happened. So we decided to try and take that hill. And that's when all hell broke loose. And every radio man and squad leader either got killed or wounded. And O'Connor walked off the hill, and I got wounded, but I didn't have a radio on. Shoot the antenna, and the guy next to him cut off the communication. So my best friend Ricky Marson he took a direct hit. The guy between Ricky and me was Odin. What hit Ricky took Odin's scalp, took the meat off his forehead, and at that point I didn't know I had gotten hit in the throat, the hip, and the hand, but I was bandaging up Odin when a round hit behind me and threw me through the air, and that's when my leg caught it. So they decided to call in medevac choppers, and well, first of all, I got up after I got wounded, and I fell. I couldn't stand up. Didn't know I got hit in the leg. I went to stand up again, and by the way, there's battle going on at the same time. I'm probably in a fog, the concussion or the mortar round behind me. And finally I realized that we were still fighting. And when I hit the ground, I couldn't stand up, so I grabbed my rifle and I started rolling down the hill. And I started rolling down, and all of a sudden I realized I was rolling up the hill. And I turned around, I rolled all the way to the bottom, and I found a kid. He'd taken a piece of shrapnel in the glasses because his glass was shattered, but he was okay. And I asked him to get me the hell out of there because I couldn't walk. So he finally grabbed me by the shirt and dragged me to the rear. And the battle subsided. I think we took the hill, and they were calling in medevac choppers, and I could hear the choppers coming in and grabbing people and throwing them on the choppers. And all of a sudden I heard the gunnery sergeant go, "Okay, let's get the hell out of here." And I realized there was me and 2 guys behind me laying in the grass. And I started screaming. I remember this. I started screaming at the top of my lungs, Gunny, get me the fuck out of here." And he came through the grass, and there was 3 of us laying there. One of them was one of our top sergeants, and I don't know who the other guy was. The one guy died on the way back, but they called in a chopper at night, which they normally don't do because it was dark. And the chopper came and got the 3 of us out of there. Next thing I went to Fubai to I call it a MASH unit. From there they took me to Cameron Bay, which is heaven. I don't know if you've ever been to Cameron Bay. It's a beautiful area. The Air Force guys walking with their surfboards and stuff going out surfing. So I was Cameron Bay for a week. Then I went to Yakuza, Japan for surgery. And then they sent me to Okinawa to Camp Smedley Butler for rehab. And then they sent me back to Vietnam. So
you ended up back in Vietnam.
yeah, that's the 26th Marines was afloat, so I ended up with the 5th Marines. So I went from Fox 226 to Fox 25.
How did it feel going back to Vietnam? Were you a little hesitant at all?
No, it wasn't, because what happened was I was in the rear at Okinawa. There was a bunch of us. They give you jobs. I was working in an office. You know, I had a nice billet and everything. I had a locker and hot showers and everything. So one day that came back, I think it was some officer came through the building one time and said, anybody 6 months or less left to do, or 6 months or more, I'm sorry, back to Vietnam. So, interesting story there. We're on the tarmac getting, the other thing is we're in our tans. So now we got to get jungle utilities. And if you've ever been to Okinawa, guys that go home, they get rid of their jungle utilities, get their stateside uniforms, go home. There was a field between some of the barracks. There was a pile of jungle utilities, 20 feet high, I forget how wide, that they were going to recycle, you know, so we started going through those. I had the whitest set of jungle utilities you've ever seen. They've been washed so many times. I look like I've been in Vietnam 10 years. So I look like Billy Badass. So here's all these guys that were in rehab in Okinawa waiting to go back to Vietnam. We're standing in line. Some of the guys got guns, they got knives, they got marijuana in their pockets. We're the salty badass guys. And we're going to get back on the plane. And one of my good friends, I don't want to mention names because there's history here, but one of my good friends, here's a group of Green Berets coming back through Okinawa for whatever reason. Here's his brother who's a Green Beret. So he gets out of formation, goes over and hugs him. And what are the odds of that? We get on the plane. Here's all these kids from the States on the plane. We're getting on with him. He runs into his baby brother on the plane who's in the Marines. So all three brothers. It kind of reminded me of the movie about the Sullivan brothers in the Navy in World War II. Here's three brothers within 100 yards of each other for 10 minutes. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So we got on the plane, flew back to Da Nang.
In your time in service, did you ever receive any promotions?
I received I got PFC out of boot camp. I was the honor man in my platoon, 1088, and I received my Lance Corporal while I was over in Okinawa.
Which one of the two would you say you're probably most proud of?
My PFC stripe, because I went in with the intention of getting the PFC stripe and the dress blues, because they only gave out 5 PFC stripes per platoon. Mm-hmm. And normally it was the squad leaders, but not necessarily, and the guide. And the guide, you got your PFC stripe and the dress blues.
Nice. That does make it a little bit more special there.
Yep.
Now, I know we've talked a little bit about some of the horrible things that we saw, or you saw over there in Vietnam. Do you have any funny memories, any funny recollections of what you guys did to maybe de-wind from all that stress? You guys ever pull pranks on each other?
No, funny things. When I was at the airstrip on night watch, I was on line, and there was always a hole dug off the trench with sandbags and a metal roof where there was 2 of us, so one of us would be on guard duty, the other guy was in that hole sleeping, and it was my turn to sleep, and the other guy came out, and he's on guard duty, and I'm laying in there sleeping, and I'm kind of like this with my head on my elbow here, and I hear this noise, and I'm feeling really warm. It's really weird, and a rat had crawled in there with me, and I got the scar right here. He was just like nuzzling my arm, and all of a sudden I realized there was something fuzzy right here. It was like a small dog. Pitch black out. I'm out of that hole. This thing is hanging here. It finally drops off. I'm screaming, okay? And we used to have a hole dug in the trench. So if somebody threw a grenade in, you drop it down in a hole, because when it explodes, it goes straight up. Well, the rat went down there, and the guy I was with shot the thing in the hole. He had a round in his chamber. So then they had to call a corpsman over there, and he checked me out. And he just barely broke the skin, so they decided they were going to medevac me out, in case of rabies and whatnot. And I don't know who the officer was. All he said was, we ain't calling a chopper for that. He says, if he starts foaming at the mouth, shoot him. I'll never forget that. So nothing ever happened. I was fine. I never got rabies. But I that was a funny moment. What else was funny? I have a distaste for ham and lima beans, which was part of the C rations back then. And when we were on the hill, the most northernmost hill, we used to switch from one position to another every couple days. And we ended up in the top position, which was a beautiful bunker protected with sandbags. It had a hole drilled in the side where the water would drain out. It had a plywood floor, so it was nice. It was comfortable considering where you were. And one day I realized that plywood floor, there was something under there, because something to support it. I lifted it up. There had to be 100 cans of ham and lima beans because nobody would eat them. So that was just kind of funny.
Probably still there today, still somewhat edible.
Well, they used to trade them to the Vietnamese, for trinkets and whatnot. Hey, give you 10 cans of ham and lima beans because nobody ate them.
Now, going through your service, what might have been the hardest part for you to adjust to or adapt to? Looking back at it, I know having family members does make boot camp a little bit easier to go into and whatnot, just because you kind of know what to expect. So maybe it was going to Vietnam or coming back to Vietnam after you're being wounded, that you're just like, this was really hard.
Probably the worst part was I went through infantry training with Ricky Marson. He became one of my best friends, and he ended up getting killed. And I didn't know till I was in the hospital in Japan when I tried to check on him, and they gave me a notice that he was killed that day. That was probably the worst thing for me.
Yeah.
He was John Wayne. In fact, when we were going up the hill, I'll never forget, because everybody's on the ground staying as low as you could be. He's standing up. He's charging up the hill like John Wayne. I mean, it was just, he would kick over. I remember the one thing he did, kicked open a spider trap, because there was a guy in there, pop it open and shooting coming down. Kicked it up, and he's like, I'm getting so low to the ground, I am underground,
Yeah.
I'm Mr. Chicken Shit. He's John Wayne.
Yeah.
And when he got killed, I took that pretty hard.
Definitely so. Let's moving on to a little bit lighter of a subject. Did you have a good luck memento?
Yeah, I do have one 50 caliber shell we made for our whole unit, and then I think I mentioned to you we had a captain in the 5th Marines. He handed us a dog tag that happened to say, "If you're the enemy recovering my body, fuck you." And I still have it today.
It's nice to have something like that, to get you through those hard times. What might have been the best experience you had in your service?
I'd have to say the people. I was not a very big person. Boot camp, the camaraderie of 75 guys, and the fact that most of them became my friends. I only stay in touch with a couple of them, but I remember my drill instructor saying one time, nobody touches our guide. So if we were competing in something and somebody touched me, my guys wailed on them, and we became good friends, boot camp, and then in infantry training, a few that went off together. Just the camaraderie. It's just, I'm prejudiced. There's nothing like the Marines. There's former Air Force, Navy, and Army, but you're always a Marine.
Do you recall the day that your service ends?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where were you and how did that go?
A couple things happened. First off, I had 3 weeks left to do, I was in ANY in the rear. And the gunnery sergeant came to me and said, "We've got an R&R to Okinawa. Nobody wants it. You can go to Hawaii, Hong Kong, Australia, Okinawa, Singapore, whatever. Who wants to go to, Okinawa?" Well, I had been there for a few months in rehab, so I figured I'd go back there because I could get out of Vietnam for a week. So I get on a C-130, a chopper from Anhua, get on a C-130 from Vietnam to Okinawa, spend a week with my friends that were still there, working there. I got less than 3 weeks left to do overseas. I get on a C-130 back to Da Nang so I can get back to Anhua to get my paperwork, to go back to Da Nang, to go back to Okinawa, to go home. So I get back to Da Nang to go to Anhua, and they've been shelling my base for 2 weeks, or a week and a half now, and I can't get back there to get my paperwork. So there's no choppers going in. So they put me on a 6x, no weapon, no nothing. We're gonna escort a gas truck convoy back to Anhua. One of the gas trucks breaks down. I'm in the tail end truck with no weapon. We're in the middle on a dirt road, level ground on all sides of us. I mean, we're a prime target. I am scared to death because I got 2 weeks left to do overseas. And I'm sitting there in a 6x. Finally, a tow truck shows up. We get the gas truck where it's supposed to go. What happened was, the day I left on the chopper to go on my R&R, my bunk took a direct hit. It's one of the pictures I still have because it didn't get destroyed because the plywood buildings we were in with the metal roofs took a hit, and everything I own, my pictures, everything was gone. So if I hadn't taken that R&R, I might not be here today. So I got back there, got whatever I could recover that wasn't blown up, and hid for a week. Then I got on a chopper, went back to Da Nang, got to Da Nang, got on a C-130 to Okinawa, got on a plane, came back to California.
Awesome. What a way to end, right? So you get out in '69, and that's kind of right when the anti-war protests are kind of spiking or hitting their peak, I guess you could say. Did you experience any of that? And if so, how did that make you feel?
You know, actually, no. I had a pretty good experience because when I got out with a bunch of Marines. And when I got to the LA airport, there's a bunch of sailors waiting to go standby. And I walked into the LA airport with a Chinese carbine on my shoulder. I had my Tom Cruise mirrored sunglasses on. I looked like Billy Badass. Since I was with the 5th Marines, I had a rope on my shoulder with my uniform, which only the 5th and 6th Marines have from Belleau Woods.
French Fortigé.
Yep. So I had a gunnery sergeant come up there. He said, no Marines have ropes. So this guy didn't know his history, okay? Nope. But I explained it to him. And I got up to I'll never forget, I got up to the desk and the young girl asked me if I got back from Vietnam. I said, yeah. And there was literally hundreds of sailors waiting to get on a plane. And she handed me a piece, so I had a good experience. She handed me a piece of paper and she said, if anybody asks you, you've been here for 2 days. Okay. They called 2 officers and me to get on the plane. And the sailors looked at me like, who the hell is this guy? So what she gave me was a number 3 technically. So I walked down to the plane, handed the rifle to the pilot. He shook my hand, sat down, had a cocktail or 2. Got back to O'Hare Airport. He handed me the rifle, shook my hand again. I get off the plane. There's 2 of my high school friends sitting at a bar waiting for a flight. And my girlfriend, who became my wife 6 weeks later, she was going to pick me up at the airport. And anyway, I get off the plane. I see these guys at the bar. So I'm sitting there having a drink with them. And my wife walks up, and she's coming into the airport. And she's got this mini dress on that barely covered her ass. And I saw her, she saw me, and I had the rifle on my shoulder, so I took it off and I just threw it to one of the guys, and luckily he caught it. And I came running up to her, she's running towards me, and if you've ever seen the Dial commercial where the guy, they grab each other and they spin around, luckily she had underwear on, because I spun her around because her mini dress was like in the middle of her back and we're spinning around in the airport. I mean, it was kind of funny. So about 6 weeks later, we got married.
Awesome. Well, that's a good way of coming home there.
Yeah, so I had none of, and I've seen it on the news, you know where they're calling them baby killers and whatnot. I didn't have that because mine was like leave Camp Pendleton, L.A. Airport, O'Hare Airport, home. You know, and I wore my uniform for a couple of days because of relatives and whatnot. But other than that, I didn't. You know, and I was dealing with military families, you know, my uncles and aunts and whatnot. So I didn't get any of that.
I'm sure they were also supportive when you went in.
Oh yeah.
You know, so that also is helpful too, coming home.
Yeah, even my relatives didn't like me then because I served the country. You know.
Yeah. So was it easy then for you to adjust back to civilian life?
Yeah, and it helped me in my personal life afterwards because of the discipline that the Marine instills in you. I ended up running a plant, and the printing company I worked for, I had one of the largest customers because of the discipline. I was disciplined. I still am today.
Yeah. Maybe
a little bit overboard.
We have that tendency as Marines, don't we? Now, when your service ends, were you? I mean, I'm sure you knew of the VA in particular because, again, you had family that served. But were you aware of all the benefits that were available?
None. All I knew was I could go to school. Being from Chicago, Roman Puchinsky, who was an alderman in Chicago, gave every veteran $100 check for coming home. The state of Illinois paid for your school, and then the VA gave you the money. So technically, that was money to live on. So I got my associate's degree. I was heading towards my bachelor's when I ended up having a baby and my job. I had to make a decision, school or work. So I was like 9 hours short of my bachelor's degree. And I went back and tried to do it, but work got involved and family. So I never finished.
What about the medical side of things? How long did it take before that started going in for you?
50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because, originally I said I got hit in the hip. I didn't know it really because what happened was with all the wounds I had a Band-Aid on my hip. And my wife was diagnosed with cancer, so we were in and out of hospitals with her, working on chemo and whatnot. And my hip started bothering me. So I ended up going to Great Lakes Naval Hospital, and they knew I had shrapnel on my legs, so they took x-rays, MRIs where they could and whatnot. And the Navy surgeon, I'll never forget, he comes in the room laughing. He showed me the pictures. He says, see all these little black spots in your right leg? And I go, yeah, that's shrapnel I couldn't dig out. He goes, right. He says, well, look over here. And he shows me my left hip. And that scratch I had, one piece of shrapnel went in, embedded itself in the ball of my hip socket, and after 50 years, scraped a lot of the cartilage away. And one day I hit bone on bone, and that's when I realized I had a problem. So I have a new left hip. And ironic, let's back up this story a little bit, away from the hospital. When I got mustered out, I was at Camp Pendleton, and I wanted to stay in. I liked the Marine Corps. I mean, the killing part, that's a little rough, getting shot at, but I thought it would be a good life because I liked what they instilled in me. And when I walked in the office, the guy says, well, you got 6 months left to do. What do you want to do? I said, I want embassy duty. I thought, guard the president, left, today. And the guy looked me in the eye and he says, you ain't tall enough. Back then you had to be 6 foot tall. Today they probably couldn't get away with it, but I think if you weren't 6 tall, it might make your life rough.
I think, because that's embassy, or that's 8th and I that would guard the president. That's the corner of 8th and I Street in Washington, D.C. And I think if I remember right from when I was in, it was 5'9", and you had to be like 180 or 185 pounds.
You had to look tough.
Everybody had to look exactly the same. That's why people got, a lot of Lance Corporals would get corporal real easily when they're in 8th and I, because again, they wanted everyone to have the blood stripe, everyone to be in the same dress blue. So when you looked at that whole battalion or that whole platoon of Marines, everyone was the exact same.
Well, he told me you're not tall enough, so that kind of burst my bubble. And it, the sad part is because of it, I copped a bad attitude because I didn't go into reserves after I got out, and I really wanted to, but it pissed me off because I wanted to try embassy duty. Maybe not the president, but embassy duty. And so I said, what's my other options? He said, well, we can give you a bonus and re-up. And I said, what's going to be my MOS? You know, where do we go? Well, we'd have to do some testing and whatnot. Okay, what's my other option? He goes, we can give you some shit duty here at Camp Pendleton, and for 6 months you just screw off. He said that. I said, what's my other option? He goes, I'll cut your papers. I said, cut them. So I was in 18 months and 21 days or 23 days. I lose track.
Yeah.
So I went home.
And how much of that was spent in Vietnam? Or how long were you in Vietnam? I should
Well, you got to take out my hospital stay and all of that, but probably total 8 months. Because they're getting wounded, hospital, Okinawa, and then back.
So
So
basically,
8 months total probably in combat.
so basically, between SOI, boot camp, and your time in Vietnam, you were either in country or training 3 quarters?
Yeah.
14 months, 12 months, something like that? That's wild. To think had just how crazy in 18 months your life changed from this college kid to combat veteran. Now, one thing I've been wanting to ask, and I keep asking in all my oral histories, is about the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989. As you guys were fighting, not Russia directly in Vietnam or nothing, but again, that was your larger enemy. That's the face behind the Vietnamese. Everybody knew that was what was going on. What was your personal feelings in 1989 as you watched the wall fall and you watched the Soviet Union collapse? Did you finally feel like you achieved victory?
No, because I never got the feeling it was final. Yeah, that happened, but then look the way it's turned around.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I always assumed, unless we see something in the bigger picture where it really changes. Yeah, that happened. Germany's a different story. The wall went down, and I've been there a couple times now with the company I work for. It's a beautiful country. Russia, it's still China. Look at China. No, it didn't hit me like the world's going to change.
Yeah.
And it didn't, unfortunately.
Do you have you ever attended, or do you still attend any reunions?
No, in fact, K-Sign reunion is in Louisville this next week, and I wanted to go, but I'm moving. I bought a house, so I'm moving, so I just don't have the time for it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I did go to the VBA, the Vietnam Veterans of America conference in Florida, and we've got a pin we're wearing now which says "Last Man Standing." Who's going to close the door on the organization? The Iraq, the Afghan vets and whatnot, there are organizations, and I don't mean to be cold about this, but they don't do anything.
No, we don't.
It's sad, and the Vietnam vets tried to combine it all into one veterans group, but you got the Legion, you got the VFW, you got the DAV, you got the the Marine Corps League, there's so many different, and for some reason we don't connect. And we're all fighting for the same thing, and when you start asking for donations or you have a raffle or whatever, where do you put your money?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. But the Vietnam vets, they really wanted to make one organization, and it seems like the younger vets didn't want to do it.
Yeah, the my veterans, my peers, I think it's still too young. We're too fresh. I'm hopeful that within 10, 15 years we can change that. But only time's going to tell. If a lot of these veterans nowadays, they just want to be alone. Don't know if that's always the best of things, but that's where their mindset is right now. At least I've seen it.
And it's interesting because I volunteer over at the hospital, and my Legion post does bingo over there, and the PTSD thing is kind of scary.
Yeah.
I know it's a different war and whatnot, but my opinion, don't take offense at this. I think we've coddled our kids, and I don't think they were ready for war.
No, I would agree 100% with that. Between that and then the fact that we were almost misled with what we were doing in Afghanistan and Iraq. I feel like we weren't prepared fully for what we were going to fight. Um, we went in there thinking like we were going to have an armed force battle. We were going to fight a unified force, and we ended up fighting civilians with bombs and rockets.
Along those lines, something, when I first got to the Khe Sanh Air Base, my first night on night watch, to make it simple, the way I looked at it, the base was 4 squares.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marine Corps line was here, 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 and here. This 4th square was Vietnamese soldiers. And I'm on this line facing them. And the one old timer with me, I says, hey, this is kind of wacky. What happens if we get attacked? I'm going to be shooting our guys, the Vietnamese. He goes, they're going to turn and run. Shoot them. That's what he said to me. I said, that was the only time I said, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
These guys are I'm fighting for them. They're supposed to be on our side. And as soon as they get attacked, they're going to want to leave. And I'm supposed to shoot them.
Puts you in a weird place, right? I know you touched on this a little bit, but maybe go a little bit farther into it. Just exactly how you feel that your service changed you. I know you talked a little bit about the discipline that comes with being a Marine and the honor, courage, and commitment of the Marine Corps. Do you feel that it changed you in any other ways?
It made me really appreciate our country and what we had. When you see other countries and what they have and what they're fighting for, what they live with, we've got it made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I saw women over there cooking with vegetable, stuff I wouldn't even step on, and they're cooking it. You know what I mean? Back then. And, the way the clothes they wore, they didn't have shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And the life they were living, what they were living in, I felt we had it made. And I wanted to make sure my kids had it made. Now their kids are making sure they,
Exactly. After experiencing, frontline modern warfare, violent warfare, has your opinions, thoughts of war changed at all?
It's a shame we have war. Even Vietnam, look at the VFW, they didn't consider it a war, it was a conflict. War is war. You're shooting at each other, it's war, I'm sorry. I wish we didn't have it. Between the bodies, the materials, look at the Palestine thing right now in our country. That shouldn't be going on, but that's my opinion. We don't want to get into that, but no, we shouldn't have war. Why can't we all get along?
It's a great question. I wish that we had an answer. I've thought that myself all along, especially nowadays, because it's not like you just have a few hundred guys meet up in some field outside the village and we're going to hack it out and whoever wins is the leader. It's today we fight a war and your town's gone. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people either dead, dispersed, or completely missing.
What happens if somebody pushes that button?
In some ways, I almost feel like that would be the easier solution, because then it's just, okay, everybody's gone. Like, you know what I mean? At least then no one has to be left to pick up the pieces at that point. This war, look at what's in Ukraine. What's left is just rubble piles. Someone's going to have to claim those and rebuild those cities, but who? Is it Ukrainians? Is it the Russians? NATO? Who's going to be the ones to do it? Someone's going to have to. And that's what happens with modern warfare. Like, you bring up Gaza, it's a great point. Like, you're angry, you want to bomb them into submission, you want to destroy Hamas. In doing so, you're bombing the most heavily densely populated place on the planet.
Yep.
And you're displacing millions of civilians in the process who all still need food, shelter, and water. Kids need to go to school. What do you do with all that? Well, Don, as we get closer to the end of your oral history here, I want to turn the microphone over to you and allow you to, talk about anything we haven't covered here, looking back at your service, and then also if you want to maybe put out there a little message for future generations, kind of to learn from your experiences.
If I had to do it over, I would. I'd have to admit, it's the Marine Corps that, brings that to light because of what they've. I'm sitting across from another Marine here, and look what you're doing. I don't want to be cold because I deal with a lot of veterans. Marines are a little bit different. I mean, I said it before, former Army, Navy, Air Force, but there are no former Marines. You take it to your grave. I don't know where you want me to go with that.
Well, just thinking like your grandchildren or something like that, maybe your great-grandchildren, someone that's not even here yet, if you wanted to give them a life lesson, a life from your story, what would that be?
We've given you this country with everything you could want. It's not the best in the world, but there's none better. I mean, we're kind of screwing with that right now, but you've got to protect this country, and you've got to help maintain it to bring it back to where it was. And I don't see that in a lot of the kids. I watched a girl in a bank the other day. It took her 10 minutes to do her name in cursive. She was signing a check. Kids counting on their fingers. I mean, we've got to get back to where we used to be. I'm not saying it was perfect, but our kids have no clue.
Yeah.
Again, we've coddled them. We want them to have everything we didn't have, but we're handing it to them.
Yeah. Now, I know you've mentioned you were a post commander at your American Legion. I know you've worked with a lot of veterans. So maybe you can answer this better, but what do you wish people knew more about veterans in general?
How much we care about this country. We're having a lot of trouble getting the younger vets in, and I understand why, because I've been to a few posts where you get the Korean War vets and a few World War II vets. They sit around telling war stories, which is good because we need the history. But some of them can't handle their liquor, so the younger vets don't want to bring their families in there with the kids and whatnot because, it gets a little rowdy. And yet there's the vets that want to take, the younger vets that want to take it over, but they want to kind of get the old guys out of there. They want to make it a family thing. Most of the vets I deal with, because I'm on the honor guard too, so at the Fort Custer here, we care about this country and we care about our veterans, and that's why we do what we do. We've got to take care of them. The reason we have this country we have today is because of the veterans, like it or not, and big business. Let's go there. But the veterans are our country.
Yeah, I think it's something like 1 or 2% of this country serves. I mean, it's a very small portion. I always tell people freedom is not free. There's somebody that's paid that price, and just because you don't know who paid that price doesn't mean that it's free. And
all my Vietnam vets, we keep saying, hey, hate to say it, if we went to war, we may have to go back.
Another thing I wanted to ask before we end your oral history is, being up there in Quezon, do you ever remember Agent Orange or Agent Purple or Agent any of those colors?
Well, it's funny you say, the B-52 strikes came in, we could see them spraying, outside of Quezon around our hills, to bring the foliage down so we could see what was going on, so there was no open attack. So I was probably laying it, and I'm always waiting for that shoe to drop. You're on ambush, you're laying in this grass,
Sure.
Granted, maybe it's not dead, but there's got to be overspray from a few yards away. I've got a friend in Kentucky who was in the Marines, didn't even know it till I found out he was sick. He was handling Agent Orange, and he takes 40-something pills a day to stay alive, and diabetes, cancer, going blind, you name it, he's got it.
Yeah.
And the VA and the government's taking care of him, but what life does he have?
Yeah. It was a great product for what it did. It's really bad for the side effects it had, right? Like Agent Orange did exactly what it was designed. You wanted trees to go away, they went away. You sprayed it with Agent Orange, there's nothing alive. The downside, like you said, is great. You sprayed that area, then you sent the next day or 2 days or a week later, sent my platoon through on a patrol, and now we're all sick with Agent Orange poisoning, even though we're technically not around it. So it's something I want to bring more to light. I think a lot of people understand that Agent Orange was used pretty loosely in Vietnam, but just understanding how loosely is very important.
I personally, I think it killed my wife because she loved her lawn and her garden, and she used weed killer.
Mm-hmm.
And always had sandals on, no gloves. They didn't know back then.
Yeah.
So I think that added to her cancer.
Well, Don, is there anything else we should talk about that we haven't covered yet before we end your oral history?
No, I don't think so. I wish we could stop being so woke in the military. The military builds character, builds men, women. Nothing against women in the military. I think we need them. I don't think they should be in combat, but we need a better military.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I always tell people, well, at least maybe this is just the Marine mindset, but to me, I never saw color. I never saw queer, straight. I never saw any of that. If we're going to be out on patrol, we're going out to a foxhole, I just need you to be the Marine. I need you to be, that's all I cared about is, are you going to shoot back?
we were all, well, not in your case you were tan, but in my case we were all green.
Yeah. That's what I care about. It shouldn't matter. We shouldn't have to have policies that allow or not allow, or laws that prohibit or allow different things in the military. It's I was a part of the lovely 1st Battalion 5th Marines, and they got arrested for moving illegal immigrants. That was always a fun time, and I was like, this isn't what the Marine Corps should be. I don't think so.
I agree.
Well, Don, I want to say thank you again for this oral history. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
My pleasure.
It's been enjoyable listening to you retell your story, your experiences over there in Vietnam. I'm sure somebody else has said this to you already, but in case they haven't, I want to be the first to say it. Welcome home. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.